Hello, everybody. I'm Kieran McCann, and this is 10 years of the Stand Comedy Club and Restaurant located in New York City. Uh, what better way to start out this interview series than with the owners of the Stand, Paul Italia and Cris Italia, and Patrick Milligan, the booker of the Stand,
I'm the meat and a brother sandwich today, apparently.
a.k.a. Patty Saltines.
Oh, my God.
I know, I had to break it in.
That's 20 years ago.
It's good, though.
No good.
Well, congratulations, fellas.
Thank you.
On the
Thank you.
past 10
Thank
years.
you.
What has it been like owning and operating a comedy club for the past 10 years in New York City? Anybody?
You could get anyone.
It's a lot of laughs, a lot of tragedy, a lot of triumph, a lot of sadness, a lot of just emotions.
I was
know?
saying that to Cris this morning as I got off my flight and we had some breakfast. We were driving into the city, and I was thinking about the Stand because I've been following you guys from afar, and I've seen everything that's happened over the past 10 years. The highlights, the stories from Cris about construction and getting the new location built out. And I'm sure Paul can get into that. I mean, some ridiculous things New York City has you guys go through just to get the place operating, but also the tragedies that have happened with Dave Kimowitz over the last 10 years. So it's like a documentary. It really is something. It's just an epic story over the past 10 years. What do you guys have to say about that?
I mean, I think that anything that lasts 10 years in New York is probably a feat in some form or another, particularly the restaurant or entertainment business in New York, for all the reasons you mentioned. But more than that, I mean, it's only gotten more and more difficult. We built the first space in 2012. 2011, really, we started that journey, and then 2012 we finally opened. But 7 years later, we had to go through it all over again, which ended up being great. But, you know, when you first hear the news that you're being evicted out of your space, it's not a good
condos.
It's not a good feeling. We did turn that and make it a great situation. But, you know, when you're first getting that news, it's like, wow, we just got to a point where things were running somewhat smooth.
At the original.
Smooth if you want to get to that. Yeah, the original space, but to have that feeling of, hey, you guys, you're doing great, but you have to go now. So that was tough.
And everything was like, when we started, everything was working against us. I think we had a stop work order from the beginning of like 6 months, Paul.
Well, in the first build, we faced, I think, what a lot of people face in the city is, a very, very intricate weave of different city agencies you have to deal with when you're trying to build something. And we hadn't really built a venue before. Even though I had background in real estate, I wasn't ready to have the amount of attention that we got from city agencies when you're building out a public venue. You could do apartment renovations, you could do a lot of construction in New York, but when you're building out a space that you're welcoming the public, there's a lot of different agencies you wouldn't have known you had to deal with, anywhere from Department of Health to the FDNY, Department of Buildings, the list goes on and on. New York State SLA, it's never ending.
We had a community board who was very particular
board,
about what we can and can't do.
It's wild, the system is made to deter you from trying anything like this. I can assure you of that. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. And if you are not really confident or persistent in your vision, the process will tear you down. So by the time you end up opening a business, you're already beat. You're already exhausted. And we were exhausted. There's no doubt about it. We were definitely exhausted opening up that location and everything we went through to get it opened. Con Edison, that was one of the funnier stories. At the end of the day, they weren't giving us their pass so the DOB could turn our gas on for the restaurant. And we had hoped that someone would come along and, give us some sort of consideration, hardship and everything else. We were doing everything we could and everything the right way, but even with that, you still have to deal with all of the mountains of just it's almost like you have all these forces against you. So it just never ends. And we got lucky one day with a guy who just came through, and it's interesting. I think my mom was there that day, and he was an Italian American. Mm-hmm. And when he saw my mom and met us, there was a little bit of a soft spot in the sense of we were humanized for a moment, where we were trying to open up this venue. We probably went through 3 inspections with DOB's plumbing department, and we still couldn't get what we needed, and not through any fault of our own, but just the way the system is formulated. So we ended up getting a little bit of consideration, which in this world you don't expect. In this New York City building a restaurant world, you never get. But we can't say it was always bad. Like little moments like that made it good. Mm-hmm. I think all of the trials and tribulations we had to open up that place, I felt really good on opening night when we saw the turnout of the industry. We saw some great names coming through: Artie Lang and Dane Cook and Lynn Koplowitz, Jim Norton.
Big J. Yeah.
Big J was there. I mean, that feeling washed out all of the immense obstacles we had to go through to get to that point.
And then 2 days later, Todd Barry's on stage, and all of a sudden I'm sitting in the middle, and I just see a flood of water hitting the stage. And I'm like, what is that? And I just look to my left, and I just see a wave of water just coming. And I'm like,
get a little taste of celebration.
that night,
Yeah.
the victory happened. We opened. We had a great feeling. And then 2 days later, we're all freaking cleaning fucking water out of the
Sewage
place.
water, several times.
Well, we found out we were below sea level.
Right after the fact.
No, the reality is we were dealing. You're dealing with an old building in New York City.
Yeah.
This building was 150 plus years old, and we had inherited what was a restaurant build out that we obviously had to change and make for our purposes. But one of those just dumb luck things was that the pitch of the sewage pipe going out to the street was actually against us, so that if there was some sort of clog, it would all come back to us and right into the comedy room. So yeah, we were, Dave and I remember being in the bathroom and literally sopping up sewage water, just doing
Pumping it
everything
out
in our
with the,
power for it not to leave the bathroom and go into the comedy room.
But it was too late.
Bathrooms back then were located right to the left
stage,
when you walk down into the showroom.
You can hear us saying, no, come on.
Yeah. It was really great stuff. I mean, look, you ever want to bond with people, find yourself
clean up
picking up
sewage.
some shit. That'll last forever. So
Yeah, but probably when that happened with all the obstacles you guys went through trying to get that place open, it was probably like it was a nothing thing. You're like,
yeah, we weren't it wasn't unexpected. It was like, oh, here's another thing we have to deal with.
Right.
At that point, you're numb. You're either numb or you're beaten. So we were numb, and there was really nothing that was gonna stop us. And I think that was just another one of those things. And then 3 weeks later, Sandy blacks out Lower Manhattan. So in our third week, just as people started to find us, we were blacked out, and we were facing spoilage, walk-in full of beer and food, and we were facing uncertainty of when are the lights going to turn.
How many
back on?
times did you walk in to work and go, I can't do this?
I mean, it almost felt like every day.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you say work, right? Because if this was a job, it wouldn't last. You this is the job you walk away from every day. I think it becomes, it's a passion, it's a vision, and it's something that you're going to fight for no matter what. But if it was a job, it wouldn't last.
Right. And Cris was saying that to me this morning. He's like, I'm in this. I can't get out. I'm gone.
Yeah. Everything you do. I mean, you got to understand, all of us were doing other things at the time that the stand was built. I was in commercial real estate. I was a partner at a firm selling buildings in Manhattan, investment sales. Patrick has always worked Cris was working on management, but he was also still working at
Journalism stuff.
at the magazine. So none of this was a job for any of us. It was just a decision we made together to an experiment
The journey. Yeah.
that
journey.
really sucked us in and took us for a different kind of a ride than we anticipated. So, again, it goes two ways. You can find out who you are very simply when you face challenges like this, but also if this was going to be something that was going to last or not was really formed in that time. Like, everything we went through made us stronger in the sense of, hey, if we got through this, we could do anything.
At what point did the idea of opening up the new location?
Well, when
did that come?
when we were faced with eviction, we had signed the lease. We had 13 to 15 year lease, but 7 years in, the buildings had been sold, and somebody was activating our termination clause, which was embedded in our lease from the start, not without any monetary compensation, but at the same time, you just got a business off the ground. You're not thinking about, hey, let's
take it away from you.
yeah, let's close this location down and let's start another one. There were thoughts of expansion with all of us in the sense that we knew early on that we had a great space, but it was difficult to make money. And at the end of the day, it's a business, so you have to make money. But it was difficult to make money, enough money to justify the pain and the process, and also to make it worthwhile for all of us individually to leave whatever else we were doing if we were going to just do this. So we were in this interesting space of, yeah, it's great. Things have worked out. We're getting all this buzz. People love the place. But as a business, it's barely there. So I think that when we heard we were going to get evicted, I think it was twofold.
Before we fast forward to that, I think, even after all that bad start that we had, just dealing with all that stuff, I think the moment that when we felt like we had arrived and it certainly helped us was when Jimmy Fallon walked in. That within the first 3 months,
Right, I do remember that.
It was around holiday season, and he was on. I guess the show was on hiatus or whatever, and he walked in he had been toying with us.
Yeah, no, that we were getting phone calls while we were building out the space from his manager or
from his
someone in his
agents.
camp. And
And we were so fortunate. We were right next to a legendary Irish bar at the time.
Yeah, that he was always hanging out in. And one day he just walks in.
yeah, but we never believed that
was gonna
those
come in.
calls
What was
were
the name
real.
of
We
it?
thought they were prank
Right.
calls.
What was the name of that Irish bar that was next to
Patty's.
Patty's, still
Patty's.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Patty's
Patty's
was-
has become iconic amongst
Patty's was
comedians.
fortunate enough and unfortunate enough to be on the border of the development. So he would have loved to actually gotten bought out of his lease and retired. But unfortunately, the landlords of his building weren't interested in selling the building. So
And it's a
he's
weird
still
visual
there.
because when you see it, you see that big green pillar, and behind it is all these brand new condos.
Yeah.
It definitely looks out of place.
Well, no. And on the other side, they
Yeah.
haven't even started to build. But yeah, everywhere around him is now gone.
So the night he walked in, he tweets,
A picture on social net.
yeah, I'm at
media.
the stand. Come check it out. Blah blah blah.
And he discovered-
And he watched the show, and he discovered he had Nate Bargatze.
Discovered a guy named Nate Bargatze.
Oh, yeah.
Fell in love with him and put him on the Tonight Show shortly. Well, was it the Tonight Show yet?
Yeah.
Or was he still
No, it was Tonight
hosting, with Seth Meyers took over?
He had just started the Tonight Show.
Tonight Show, right?
Yeah, now he's all over the map now.
Yeah.
Nate. Yeah.
no,
And
he's-
Nate wasn't even on the show, right? He
Nate was
wasn't scheduled to.
It was
perform.
He had
it was
never
a
been on the
Sunday
show.
night show ran by our street team guy.
Right.
Yeah, he's doing theater.
Louis
now,
Gomez?
right? Big.
No, this guy Martin. Yeah, Lewis was our original street team guy.
I remember firing Luis Gomez as a street team guy.
Yeah, thankfully he.
Maybe I
he had
helped
another
him. I
business.
pushed him in the right
Yes, you
direction.
did.
Right direction.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, Lewis used to sell tickets for my cringe humor shows at Caroline's back in 2006.
Yeah.
And he worked with us in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poster
It's
dog
hard.
comedy.
You don't really remember that, but as we were talking about Street Team, I remember, yeah, we that was one of the things. We were against the Street Team formula, but also as a new comedy club, we were trying everything, and then we were seeing what worked. And I think that, you learn a lot that way, but you also got to be ready to move. So taking us to that moment where you hear about, hey, it's time for you guys to go. I mean, we didn't go quietly.
Right.
It took a couple of years.
not really years, but we didn't go quietly in the sense of if we would have just left when they asked us to, it would have been a lot sooner. But we were determined. We made a decision, I guess, that we weren't going to fold up the tent. We were going to recreate it, maybe expand it, and the search began. And we went through trials and tribulations there. We fought hard for a space down on Spring and Bowery. We took the community board to task there. They didn't want us to have a liquor license. We ended up appealing to the state. We brought 20 comedians with us to the New York State Liquor Board hearing to testify on our behalf, like why spaces like ours were important to New York, and how the Bowery had a rich history of being playhouses and amongst other things, but playhouses and theaters and everything else. And we were, right on the Bowery, and they wouldn't allow us to take this space that we thought was a great spot. It was all subterranean. We fell in love with the space. We fought hard for about 8 months, and we lost. So at that point, we were like, wow, we really spent a lot of time with that location. Now what? And then, we went into we had a few months left to find the place before we actually had to close and surrender the space. Because at that point, we had taken a deal after, a year or two of fighting or battling with the new landlords. So the reality was that we have lost a big fight, which was exhausting. We had really hoped that we didn't really think there was any way we were going to lose. We're trying to do an arts and entertainment venue in New York City. How can people shoot that down? But, you talk about different levels of government. You're dealing with the state. They're not really interested in what's happening on the corner in New York City as much as you'd think they would. And the community board, unfortunately, sided with a handful of tenants that had enough. In that area, there was just too many bars and restaurants, even though we're not really a bar and restaurant as much as we are an entertainment venue. But, to pay the bills, you have to do what you have to do. You have to sell alcohol. You have to reinvent yourself as a restaurant, as many ways as you can to make it all work. So for whatever reasons, it wasn't meant to be, right? I think that we lost that battle, and another challenge that we had to overcome, and also it tested our resolve. And hey, are we sure we want to do this? Maybe this isn't meant to be. Maybe we're not supposed to keep this thing going. And we walked into a space, which is the stand now. Used to be a Brother Jimmy's. And
I still smell the smoke from the barbecue pits.
Yeah,
and as my memory of walking in for the first time.
The first time I ever walked in was way before we got the space, and this is a killer story too. We end up walking in, and by the way, all of these stories are tantamount to what happens when you're looking for bars and restaurants. This is not a unique story to us. This is probably what happens to anybody in the field of trying to open up bar venues and entertainment venues. We had heard of this space a long time ago in our search, but it was just not really in our budget. It was a much, much larger space than we wanted. I mean, the current stand is 3 times the size of the old stand.
Hell yeah.
We're looking at 10,000 square feet versus what we used to have was less than 2,500 square feet on 2 floors. So you think about just in numbers. I mean, I don't want to go into what we pay for rent. I don't think that it's necessary, but 3 times the space, just think of it that way. Yeah. So the reality was that we didn't want to take on that much of a financial nut. So we had turned the space down. We were scared, and we just said, let's keep looking. And then when we lost the battle on Bowery, we then turned around and went back to that space. And the space, at that point, we had few options. We had 2 months left. The space was still what it was when we first saw it, the costs and everything else. But now we were in a different mode, and we were like survival mode. Right. We've got to get something done.
Wasn't it at that time, not to cut you off, you guys were doing pop-up shows, right?
Not yet.
Not yet? No?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was still while the stand was open. So the original stand's open. We go to get this space. We give the broker the offer, full offer. We're like, we can't negotiate, so take our money, right? And 2 days later, we hear that someone else is signing the lease. And we lost the space. Someone else had signed the lease. So we again are facing, wow, maybe this isn't meant to be. So we were looking at a couple of other backup spaces. We got really close to another deal. We were forcing a little bit because we were so desperate. It was another deal on the Bowery. But a month into that moment when we found out the space was gone, we got a call from the broker who made the deal, who had also known us because he had been showing us spaces around the city. And he says, I don't know if you're still interested in the space, but the guys who signed the lease are having second thoughts. And then I was like, well, here's that moment,
Right.
when you
Right.
thought it wasn't meant to be, when you lost
There's
the
that little
space.
shining
But
light,
what does it
right.
actually mean that it's coming back to us like this, which is a little bit of a rare occurrence.
Meant to be, maybe.
Maybe it was meant to be. So then we started thinking quick, and we all made a decision, to do it. And, thus began the year of turmoil that we faced in building out that space.
I think this is what Cris told me about many years ago.
So in between the original location closing and us opening our current home, that's
Right.
when we did the pop-up shows
Right.
at
Right.
every venue that would have us, just to keep the brand going and
Right.
keep our fan, not fan base, but our clientele, interested in the brand still.
The comics that performed at the original stand.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that went into that thought process. One was we had some staff that we didn't want to lose, and how do you keep it going?
Right.
How do you justify keeping people on the payroll? And I think that the pop-up shows did, what Pat's mentioned is keep the fans engaged, which is very important, kept the comedians engaged with us, and it also helped us keep on staff that we wanted to keep. What's great about it was how the staff was really into it, and the comedians were really into it, and the fans, they didn't realize they were not coming to the stand.
Right.
They thought they were going to a stand show to the last moment, where they'd show up at a random location.
In a hotel
And I
or
don't,
a music venue.
Yeah,
or a
we
bar.
popped up everywhere. But what's interesting is how we were doing it 5 nights a week sometimes.
Yeah.
At least
Were you really?
At least
Yeah,
3-4 nights a
up,
week.
we got up to at least 5 shows sometimes. What
My God.
Well, we would do multiple shows on Friday night and
was that
Saturday.
place on the corner of the bar?
Esther and Carol, was it?
Esther and Karen. We were
you
doing
guys,
that.
so you guys were coordinating those shows as you were just trying to get into the new space at the
Well,
same
this
time.
new space, is an ongoing situation on a daily basis for a year or so. Building out a 10,000 square foot space, you have to understand what 10,000 square feet is. Like when you're walking down the street of Manhattan, you're looking at a typical building with a storefront and some apartments above it, not a big giant condo building or apartment building. That's about a 10,000 square foot building. All the people living in that building and the storefront on the ground floor is usually on or about that size. So now you're talking about building this, right? It's just like building a building. I mean, you're building. We thought we landed in a space that we were going to preserve in some way because it was already a bar restaurant. But we get there, and we slowly realized that was just a failing or flailing thought, because we probably spent more money throwing out everything in that space than most people spend on a car. And it was a nightmare because, we would thought we had the space that we were going to build on, but instead we had to get to a space that we had to take apart till we get to the place where now we can begin to build it.
Completely gutting walk-in boxes and
Yeah,
refrigeration.
so
Really?
Yeah, and ovens and everything.
Yeah.
Just a complete gutting and overhaul.
Yeah, there was not one piece in the whole space that we end up keeping. I mean, we literally started from less than zero. I mean, it was nuts. It's not what we expected, and that's obviously what was another challenge. Now, we had a budget, and we knew that things could get out of control very easily in a large space like that, and we were fighting that every step of the way, regardless of your fighting. It becomes a black hole that is sucking you in, that you cannot escape. And to give up you can easily give up. I mean, at any moment you could get sucked in and never be seen again.
Oh yeah, no.
Fighting it is
I've spoken many times to your brother, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't know."
yeah, and it never ends. I mean, every single situation is like this.
Well,
we had built.
He kept playing the Money Pit song.
Yes, yeah. The Money
It
Pit
was-
is about
thanks.
it. Only there's no comedy part of this. It's
Yeah.
like it's all misery. And we had done a little build out in Long Island City of the standing room, in between. So it's just we weren't strangers to any of it, but it really took a lot. It took everything, emotionally, physically. You're battling every single day to get something done. And it really takes a lot out of you. So
Now that you're 10 years in now, are you relaxed now after getting through all of that? Are you relaxed as a business owner?
no,
successful.
how can we be relaxed? We just came out of a pandemic that almost took us our head off.
Wiped us out.
We literally so we're open. We finally get open after a year
We are
of trials and
cranking.
tribulations, doing
Another-
We are
pop-ups
cranking.
everywhere in the city.
Another variant will just take us out.
Yeah. Testing everything up until that moment
Yeah.
was testing us as human beings, but it was also testing our relationships with each other, our thoughts of the industry, why we're doing this, what's the point? Let's forget about this whole thing, take whatever money we have left over and walk away. You have that feeling all the time. And then all of a sudden you finally get opened. And, tragically, we dealt with losing our partner.
Yeah, that was weeks after we went live.
3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Dave Kimowitz, yeah.
Yeah. I'm my 40th birthday
Oh my
was
god.
July 31st, and he's at the club singing "Happy Birthday" to me. And
That's right.
A few hours later, we got the news that
And he was your business owner. He was
Partner, yeah. Co-partner.
yeah.
Yeah, David was there from the start with us and everything that we did. So,
yeah, David helped
it was a big loss.
turn me from a comedy
Everybody in
fan
the
into
stand community,
a
obviously.
venue owner. Yeah,
Yeah.
he made our dreams. He was an integral part of our dreams coming true.
There from the beginning,
Yeah.
before even the original
We
location
were
was
all
open.
brought in.
And, the reopening.
There's a story there how we were all brought in together as well. I mean, David and I had been partners in commercial real estate sales. We were both part of the same company. That's how we met. And Cris had been already had met Pat, and Pat and Cris were working on doing shows together in New York City. And basically, Cris would recruit me to help promote the events because he knew, I had my dabble in club promoting when I was younger, and I knew a lot of people in the city. I lived in the city, and together we would start promoting those shows. And Dave had a love for comedy from the beginning. He had a love for, that kind of artistry, like live entertainment. He had been involved with music management. He had managed a couple of music artists together with a couple of friends. And we all
Dave
meet.
was the first Jewish person to ever manage rappers, right?
Yeah, maybe. I doubt that. but-
Rappers, it was rappers, yeah.
Yeah, and he loved hip hop. He was a big hip hop fanatic.
But they had been doing stuff together. Like they had that bar on the Lower East Side.
Yeah, so serendipitously, Dave and I, while we first in the first year that we met, we were working at a commercial real estate firm where a lot of us had some interests in buildings. We would do we would sell a building or be involved in transacting something, and we would leave our commission or we would leave money in the deal, so we would become partners in owning buildings in the city. And that's, by the way, how we found the original location of the stand. I had been a partner in that building.
Right.
And it just, there's another story there. But going back to what Cris mentions is, Dave and I were bored, and, selling commercial real estate in Manhattan is very boring. So we end up taking over this bar. Dave and I take over this bar. It was called Infrared Lounge. The owners of the business had disappeared overnight, and our friend owned the building. And he's like, hey, you guys want to take a crack at owning a bar? And, we got our first taste of it, which ended 8 months later with Dave and I would not show up to work anymore at the office. And the owner of the building was our good friend who owned the brokerage firm. And he was basically gave us an ultimatum and said, you guys got to choose. Is it going to be the bar business or is it going to be real estate? And we chose real estate at that moment. But the exposure we had to owning a bar together, we had a lot of fun. It was easy to have fun when you could walk away. If you're an owner of a business, you know the difference about working at a business or taking over somebody's business for a little while and owning it. It's two different worlds. So when you know you could walk away at any moment and you don't really have a lot of skin in the game, it was all great. So that experience formed in our mind that, it could be fun having a bar and owning a bar, but it was completely different on the second time around. But yeah, so David and I became close with experiences like that. And we kind of all came together on the comedy end because we were promoting these shows. I think the first show we promoted was a show you did for an Cringe Humor Awards show at Caroline's.
Caroline's, yeah.
In 05. Yes.
That was a big lineup. Bill Burr.
Bill Burr. I named Patrice O'Neill Cringe Humor Comedian of the Year. Jim Norton was there. Colin Quinn accepted a Lifetime Award. Like it meant anything. It was a mock award show, but it ended up being pretty legit.
It was cool. I was there. It was great.
Yeah, I believe you were involved in the production of that.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
That fan was Hack of the Year.
That fan was Hack of the Year.
And he showed up to accept it.
Did he really?
I
don't remember that.
No, I bamboozled him at the comic strip.
Oh, was that was?
And gave him the award.
Photo.
Yeah, but he wasn't there that night.
And then, we got, I was telling you earlier, like we went on this run of shows at Times Square Arts Center, which was the former Laugh Factory, and they were successful. And then, like, Giannis Pappas' character, Mauricio Rodriguez, goes viral and was selling out shows like every week. And the guys that were running that kind of saw us having some kind of, method to our madness. And we figured out some kind of recipe where, we were bringing a lot of people to the location. So they said, hey, why don't you guys take a crack at operating this place? If you don't mind, put a business plan together and, let us know what you want to do. And that sparked us like kind of coming together. We never really thought about doing a comedy venue until that happened. And then that sparked that interest in doing it. But I think there was something very uncool about doing it in Times Square anyway.
Ironic because when I was a kid, I used to go there to buy adult films. And
right. Now here you were taking it over.
And here we are
Watch
potentially.
peep shows,
Watch peep shows. Here we are potentially running it.
So just as we were trying to make a deal, just as we were trying to make a deal with them, some theme park company comes in and says, we want to do a haunted house here, and threw like millions of dollars.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars. The guy.
Yeah, you
The place lasted like 4 years, so I guess it was.
It did last.
Semi-successful.
At the time, the owner of the building, who was a famous like old mobster, who they wrote an article years later after he died, who owned the building. He wanted to do a deal with us, but he had been negotiating with them, with the amusement park company, for 5 years. FDNY was stopping the deal from happening because you couldn't get out of the building fast enough, with the capacity we're trying to do and everything else. The reality was it was a long shot to begin with, but we really came together and built a business plan.
Yeah, I think from there, Paul was like, well, let's not stop here. And that's when he...
Well, when we got turned away, it was we really thought we were going to get the deal, and we had those successful weekends with Giannis, showed us that we could do this business. And we were like, they want us because they've never seen this kind of revenue in a weekend in a long time. And
so that was really something.
Yeah, and it showed us that we could do it. I mean, obviously, Giannis's character was a big part of that success, and there was a niche. But we were doing it now for a few weekends, and we were
bringing in at least 600 people a night.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when we lost that opportunity, we all decided to, why don't we just do it ourselves?
Instead of making other venues money.
We were already doing, we're already together at this point, right? You got Dave and I had come in to fund a pilot that Cris pitched us about. It was called Comedy Loves Misery, which included Patrice and Bobby and Colin and Rich Voss.
When she was pregnant with Raina, who's now 13 years old.
It's amazing. So Cris was pitching us for, he was obsessed with the idea of doing this show. and Dave had some friends with video cameras. I forget, it was
Denmark Films.
Denmark Films.
No.
Well, it was our first production company we hired to do stuff with. And we teamed up with them, and we filmed this pilot that lives somewhere right now.
Yeah, on my hard drive.
And it's great because that was,
among other things.
Yes.
that was the thing that got everybody really embedded together. Because look, the minute you introduce money into a situation, things start to become real in the sense of, okay, I've invested. Dave and I we were bored still selling buildings in Manhattan.
Right.
And we were like, let's do this. And we had some
Yeah.
disposable income.
So I'm really bored. Boys. I don't know. What do you
need
got
some
going?
excitement.
What do you got going on with that thing you're doing?
When we say we're bored, when you're successful in something, and it took us years to become successful. It wasn't like Dave and I walked into this commercial real estate where he had been there a year. I gotten in from being involved with other things, and we were successful because it was the time in the city that everything was just riding high. And it came too easy to us, and that's why we were bored. So this was something we seemed all passionate about, and obviously Cris was my brother. I was like, yeah, he's got this incredible passion for this. I think, it could work. There's something there. Mm-hmm. And that turned into comedy management, and that turned into production, and that turned into, why don't we own a comedy club? At the time, Cris was starting to work with artists. They was getting more involved with that as well because he had been already involved with managing artists that were hip-hop artists. So it kind of all started coming together and forming on its own. And I came in with the idea, when we lost that deal, I was like, well, we were so close to take this space, which had so many challenges. It wasn't our first choice. We didn't want to be in Times Square. Why don't we just open up our own space? And that's really how it started. The idea came about from that moment. It was only 3 months later that we signed the lease to the location that became the original stand.
Wow.
And so we're going back to 2010 now, right? 2010, 2011, we signed the lease.
And
we opened up.
And Pat and I are like, we don't know anything about running a restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, Cris and I have that.
Shows, that's all.
Well,
Going along for the ride,
Pat didn't really need to get. Pat just always was in his lane. He was booking shows.
Yeah.
He was a comedy super fan, and he knew the industry better than most. So he always stayed in his lane. Cris became a comedy manager. He started working with these acts, and that was a transition. For me, I was in real estate already, and the deal starts with the real estate. So I didn't really see I was changing lanes so much. I remained the broker. I remained in real estate to this day. So I wasn't changing lane there, but the restaurant business and the bar business was very interesting. Again, we had that taste, Dave and I, for a few moments. Cris and I had come from a household that, our parent was involved in restaurants our whole life. So even though we didn't know about running a restaurant, we had it embedded, I think, somewhere in our DNA growing up around it all day. So you can't say it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, the embedded was my dad leaving me alone in his pizzeria at the age of 16, going, I'll be back. And then 8 hours later,
Go ahead.
I don't know what to do with this
If anyone
pizza.
wants to know why we have a beautiful brick oven pizza, we can blame.
Right.
Father.
One of the things that, I always said to myself, watching my father throughout my whole life involved in that business, was I was never going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people have that moment. They don't really want to go into the family business.
You watch these guys, these mostly immigrants that are opening up those types of places. They work 12 to 16 hours a day. They never see their kids or their family. And, they don't. It's not like they're getting rich off of it most of the time.
Right,
so
it's a grind, yeah.
It's a grind. So it's like, who wants that life? Nobody really wants that life. And that's all I thought about, when you think restaurant, bar, whatever, it's like it's an all day, everyday thing. And, there's no way, you're going to be able to manage all of that stuff. Because, again, up until then, Pat and I were really just focused on stand-up and, knew that we could do that well. And then, if it wasn't for Paul's experience, I think, Ivor, I'm sure taught him some lessons, but then he had this other bar when he was younger, pageants and on the
I didn't run, like I said, any business I had gotten involved with, I didn't own. So it was different. It was easy to walk away
But the nightlife thing was something Paul knew. Like, he knew what kind of people wanted, what made them tick, that kind of thing. And to combine the two was never done before. I mean, it's just not something any club in the whole freaking country has ever done, is kind of take nightlife and put comedy into it.
Right.
And build that vibe where it's not this corny place to go hang out.
With horrible food and drink.
Have real food.
Yeah, the motivating...
But not just the real food, is the hangout.
Right,
Yeah,
the motivating factor was when you guys were doing shows, I remember being introduced to these spaces because Cris and Pat would be booking a show. A lot of times it was a charity event that Cris was putting together as a comedy show. And he'd be like, all right, I'm doing this show at this dump somewhere in fucking Times Square. And he would want me to promote this. And I would bring people there and be like, this is terrible.
Right.
Why is comedy in spaces like this? I get that,
Class it up a little bit.
No, and it's not even class. It's like I had been living in the city for a while at that point. And, living in the city and being in a business where you entertain clients a lot, you're out every night. You know what's right, what's not right, what's good, And walking into each and every one, and unfortunately, a lot of those clubs are still around. I'm sorry, not unfortunately, but unfortunately, they're still around in that state.
Right.
I remember getting served food on a paper plate, and I was like, "This is just unacceptable." I think
that was Broadway Comedy Club.
What drove us, or especially me, was the fact that there's no need for this. Nobody who has to watch a comedy show in Manhattan should be punished in this way.
Right.
So I think what drove us that I knew that it could be done better. Right?
I remember we sat in an office one night and we wrote down what is wrong with comedy clubs.
Right.
And that's when we decided, okay, we're never going to have a drink minimum. We're never going to do check spots. We're never going to compromise the quality of a show.
Right.
We came up and we're never going to, just offer horrible food and drinks at an exorbitant price.
Right.
Because we've all been bamboozled by these venues throughout the city.
And I had not really had exposure to comedy clubs until Cris and Pat's shows. And I learned two things. One, everybody loves to watch comedy. Mm-hmm. And when people are having a good time and they're laughing, they're not going to care what they're really spending. If they're being offered the right service and the right menu and its quality, there really isn't going to be a moment where people think anything is going to be too much money. And it's not like you were walking a comedy club and it was expensive, but it was the same price as things that were available in other locations for much better quality. So it just didn't make sense. And a lot of things come from trying to fix something. You say, why did this work out? One of the things I think that is attributed to our success is the fact that we were just trying to fix maybe something that we thought was wrong. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong, but we thought it was wrong. So that's what we would draw
some
on.
clubs still have a lot of success with it, and that's their thing.
And our advantage was with me and Cris producing shows at so many different comedy venues. We saw what we liked and didn't like, and that's the stand is an amalgamation of.
But I go back to the hang is the most important thing.
Right.
What do we do with people before and after the show?
To me, it was not a good formula in any business. If the hardest thing to do in New York City nightlife, restaurant, bars is occupancy. It costs a lot of money to get an ass in a seat, to get that customer to come to you. Once you have him, why would you be in a hurry to throw them out?
Right.
And every club we went to at the time, most clubs,
they'd push you right
outside of the cellar. The cellar was one of the places we thought, this is interesting because we get to hang out upstairs before and after the show. It's a little separated and everything else, but that feeling was there. Yeah. Even in Times Square Arts Center, there was a lot of other spaces that we were going to utilize. And we were thinking, well, no one's leaving here. It's like when you were a kid, you got inside that movie theater, you were going to sneak into at least 2 other movies, At least I did anyway. So why would you want to leave? And I think what we wanted to create was that environment where you didn't want to leave and you want to get there, have a drink, see a show, come back upstairs, have another drink, sit down and eat. Next time you'll have dinner because we're serving good food. Come and have dinner, drink, go see the show, come back up, have one last nightcap before you leave. That was always our formula. Like it's not, we didn't reinvent anything. We just took what we thought could be better, and we did our best to make that moment better. And I think that's what reflected even more so and was amplified when we moved to the new space, because we had that now. We had the real opportunity to create that. We had a secondary room now that we could utilize to really create that moment of, once we get you in here, we don't want you to leave. We want you to stay. We don't want you to move.
Yeah.
We don't want you to move. No one in Manhattan goes out and just has dinner. Right. No one in Manhattan goes out and just has a drink. You know, on an average night, a New Yorker going out on the town will visit at least 3 locations.
And I always tell people, our venue is your one-stop date night. You don't have to opt
everything
from a restaurant or to a bar to a comedy club. It's all inclusive.
We have a restaurant. We have a comedy venue. We have an incredible bar. We have all of those things.
Hang.
You don't need to go to the next spot to experience all of the things you typically want to experience when you go out. And so that was always what drove us. So, you know, finding that moment that propelled us into thinking we could do it, all of the years that came before that. The Stand is having its 10-year anniversary. We are having our 15-year anniversary, probably.
At least,
Yeah.
So, you know, they always say an overnight success is a 10-year process. So
Who says that?
people say that. People
he
say
did.
I've never heard it.
I just want that phrase. I've heard that a lot of times. You know, an overnight success. Everybody always congratulates somebody when, oh, you got 10 years. Yeah, we had 5 years before that.
Yeah.
So, you know, we had been through a lot just to get to that moment where we opened, and now we've been through double that pain to get to where we are. Mm-hmm. So the question is, you know, what keeps us going? I mean, you know, are we relaxed? I don't think there's a day we're relaxed. You know, you get into a mode where you're always looking for, because you're so used to the challenge that you can't function without it. So you are constantly being challenged, and when there isn't enough challenge, you create your own challenges. You take on more stuff.
I think your brother was saying that about you this morning to me when we were driving.
It's not just me. It's, you know, it's all of us. I think Cris
Well,
is guilty of it too. I mean, you know,
No, absolutely.
Look, we're sitting in a podcast studio that, you know, he convinced me we needed 5 months ago.
I did not give it.
You know, we
we're
have
here
to
now,
do this.
Cris. Yeah.
And then here we are. So there's always more challenges because you're in that mode. You can't live without it. It's become, it's almost masochistic.
I think what we learned during the pandemic in that downtime was, like, when we come back, if we come back, you know, how do we hit the ground running? What more can we do for revenue purposes to keep surviving and keep the place alive and do all the things you would want to do? And, you know, that's getting into the digital space.
Right.
That's finding ways to bring people entertainment to their homes in case they can't be here. And, you know, that's a lot of what we focused on. It's why we decided to get involved in the digital space and the channel and launch Wits. And, you know, you have to when you're a venue, you have to find every single avenue to entertain people. It's not just physically. It's not a physical thing anymore. Now it's everything.
Well, before the pandemic, as live entertainment owners, we would have fought the notion to go digital or not give anybody a reason not to come in to watch live comedy. But once the pandemic hit, it was clearly apparent.
Changed the game a little bit.
That, you know, it was going, what was happening is we were getting flooded by obviously having no option, but also we took a lot of time to try and figure out how we would enter the space, creating a place where people could find us when they can't come to see us. In this instance, it was because there was a pandemic, but a lot of people discover us from out of town or they're a tourist in New York and they want to have that feeling again, but they're not going to come and visit us every night. So I think that what we're doing is evolving as most people are going to do, right? In any business you evolve, you keep moving. You can't stand still. You can't, you know, I love some of the old comedy clubs in New York, you know, like Dangerfields. You used to walk in, it was a time capsule. But what happens to a place that doesn't evolve? It becomes a museum. Right. And there's a kitschiness to that, and it's great, but how many nights a week are you going to have that experience? I think we created an environment.
Something new, something vibrant. Something
we created something.
And the other thing
we're not going to
learned
stop evolving. And that's
was we can't be in every city every night. Mm-hmm. So, and there's places that may have clubs in their town, but, the booking process, as Patrick can tell you, it's different from every person who books. And I think, culturally, we've got more of a beat on that than anyone else just because of how diverse New York City is and because we've just seen every single type of comic to come along, whether they're storytellers, writers, alt scene, one-liner, whatever. We've seen them all. So
when we originally opened the club, I always wanted to mend the bridge between what's considered alt or now hipster rooms and comedy clubs. So bring in a lot of different acts and put on free shows because that's what the alt rooms were doing and the bars shows were doing. Mm-hmm. So that's how the show Every Monday Night Frantic came about, because I was tired of seeing all these comedians going out and doing these free shows and taking business away from us. So I said, all right, let's give it a shot. And now, thankfully, every Monday, it's packed to the gills, and so many amazing, talented performers have grown and dropped in and been a part of that. So it's all about adapting and offering just that great product and evolving and constantly pushing. So we look forward to the next challenges, whether it's in the venue or part of the digital world.
So much of stand-up comedy is routine and repetitiveness. A lot of clubs just get stuck, especially clubs in other cities, get stuck in this thing of just, okay, these are the comics I'll just book. They're in a rotation, and every year it's kind of like the same thing. And whereas
I get bored with my rotation. I always, the way I book is what I go out and pay to see this show.
Right.
And that is how I've done it since day one. Because I'm a comedy fan, believe it or not, even after all these years and after all this, difficulty. But that's exactly how I book. So I'm constantly turning over the roster of comedians because I want to see fresh new faces that get people to come out. And obviously they got to be hilarious.
And it's also about...
It's time. It's
evolving with the times.
Especially being in New York, it's got to be time consuming trying to get a good lineup.
Right.
Looking through people. Maybe this one
doesn't work. But, I thankfully I have a wonderful staff that gives me a heads up. Yeah. And, Cris is always whispering in my ear and Paulie as well. Yeah. So, there's a lot of just a nonstop pipeline of talent. I always try to stay a generation or two ahead of the other clubs and cultivate that talent.
And I've always said that, like, Patrick has the most scrutinized job in entertainment because every single lineup is under the microscope, and I think people have a hard time sometimes looking at it as a whole versus looking at it as an individual night, an individual lineup, and they'll see sometimes, 3 white guys, 2 women, and 1 black guy, and that's how they look at the view of the lineup, but it's not like that at all. It's whoever's the best comedians that night that Pat thinks can make the best show is what happens. And I was telling you the story of that. There was this Latino comedian who came to me the other day and said, dude, there's 4 Latinos in the lineup tonight. And the fact that happened naturally, I'm wowed by that. That's amazing,
That's not me making a concerted effort. It's, okay, these funny guys are available and people will come out and enjoy them. So just line them up.
Like, a lot of people, unfortunately, with comedy, they're putting comedians into a category in a box. You're a Latino comic, you're a black comic, you're an alt comic, you're this, you're that, and it's like
just be a funny, likable comic. That's all I ask.
Is this a product of like New York though? Like him deciding what the lineup is and people critiquing it? Is that a product of New York and how everybody wants to come to New York?
No, it's a product of our time and our culture, unfortunately. Yeah. It's where it's going. For some reason, comedy's become this lightning rod where somehow we're to blame for all of society's, problems. Yeah. So we're easy targets.
Yeah.
And I think they look at a lineup and that kind of tells the story of like where we're at somehow.
Well, what I was saying is everybody's eyes are focused on this area and this scene.
But it happens in LA, it happens in Chicago. Really? Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, maybe here because there's just more people, but
I feel definitely. Like maybe I'm biased to New York. I feel like this is the best place to do comedy. Maybe.
I mean, I think we've been more affected by, like the changes in cultures over the 10 years. And we've always adapted, but we've never forgotten what got us here either. And you shouldn't. Like, there's no reason not to have a guy you had on opening night. Just because things have changed. He's still funny. If he's still relevant, he's still funny. He's still writing jokes. Why wouldn't he be on stage?
Yeah, I've always booked by the sum of a lineup. A lot of clubs bring in that one big name and they fill the lineup with garbage. No, I'm going to give you 5 to 6 killers.
Right.
And some names might be bigger than the others, but everyone goes home with their cheeks hurting from laughing.
And discovered somebody new.
Exactly. Like I used to go when I used to hang out at the Cellar. Right. I would catch a free show that ran 5 hours long because combined crowds.
Something that I've noticed since the first stand open and you guys transitioned into the new place. Like a lot of those people that were there at the beginning, comics in the beginning, they all came with you. Even through the time when you guys had to rebuild and you had to do the pop-up shows, all those comics are still there and growing in their careers.
Right.
Which is great.
That's been fascinating to see too. A lot of the guys when we first put them up at the original space and even people that were under our management that we saw develop in 10 years. It's pretty wild. You're still looking at them the same. They're the same people, but they've had incredible success.
Now they're on TMZ.
Yeah, it's really great. So yeah, we definitely spoiled, I think, being in New York, but at the same time, this is where that art really flourishes.
Right.
And then it travels from New York and LA and maybe from Chicago into other cities all across the country. It wouldn't exist as it does today if it wasn't for where it starts, right? And I think that it's crazy to think that every single comedian that people know in this world started from one of a few clubs in New York or LA.
Right.
And we're not talking about dozens of locations. We're talking about maybe 3 to 5 real locations that these, people like Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, all these icons, they started on a stage, mostly in New York, some in LA, and then everything else came from there.
Yeah.
So it's we never thought of it. I didn't think of it that way, but now when I look and I say, wow, that guy started on our stage. Like Nate was lucky enough to be there that night. And it's an incredible story. And look, what he's done with being there that night at our place.
Right.
It's definitely fulfilling and satisfying to see that we created a place where people like that are coming from. But we never. I didn't think of that when we were doing it. We were thinking about, hey, make sure that we're getting the beer deliveries on time, and the guy in the kitchen is going to be there tonight to cook for us. That's what you focus on, and you're not thinking about everything that's happening. 10 years later, you're looking back, going, "Wow,
yeah." Pete
this
Davidson
guy
was 15, and we used to sneak beers.
We used to sneak a beer to him. It's wild. So we have these stories organically that just form over the time, but it's beautiful to think that we were able to be one of those places. It is a privilege to do that.
Took a lot of punches to get there,
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to anything worth doing. Is gonna be difficult, but I think that's what drives us all is that we've created a place that we see that, and every day we see a comedian start today that could be the next Pete Davidson, that could be the next Chris Rock,
maybe Ian Lara.
Exactly.
Well, a perfect example is one of our managers is down in Florida, sees this kid, Marcelo Hernandez, and literally tells him, get on a plane to New York as soon as you can. Guy comes up, spends maybe 3 months here, and he's on SNL within the year.
Right.
And that's, had it not been for Joe Harari, who was one of our managers, that would never have happened. He would still be in Florida right now, not realizing he could be on SNL. And that's the parallels of, I guess, what the last 10 years are like and what has happened in comedy. Our success and our ability to survive has also shown how many careers can launch and how many careers
and
could end.
nurtured also.
Yeah,
I mean,
nurtured.
we started thinking we needed to own a club back then because Cris and Dave were getting involved with managing comedians, and they weren't being. It was difficult to find stage time in the city because the good clubs, obviously they had their acts. It was very difficult to crack into those clubs, and maybe still difficult. We like to think it's less difficult now because what we've done is shown people that you can still launch a lot of new talent. You don't always have to. And it's not like we're the only ones doing it, but we always had our eye on that. As Pat says, he always tried to find the best of the talent out there, regardless of the underlying, the person, but also, is it a new comedian? Like the idea that someone could come from Florida and get on our stage is a powerful thing. It wasn't like that 10 years ago when we did it, and I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do it. It's because we saw that something along the way had changed. If things hadn't, maybe we helped change it back or change it into something different and evolve. But think about the fact that if guys like, if there's no starting point ability or opportunity for some of these guys, how do you find that new talent? How do you develop that new talent once somebody is discovered? We really always had our eye on that, introducing comedians to the crowd. People used to say to me, "Oh, who do you have on tonight?" Like, what's obviously people are always looking for a big name and a celebrity, and I like to always say, if you're looking for comedy, I think we have the best comedy that you're going to find. Mm-hmm. I said, that's all I can tell you. It's not about a person. It's about, what the lineups that we're putting together have something for everybody mostly. Mm-hmm. But it also, again, goes back to what we were trying to do about quality. Everything has that on the forefront of our minds. The best comedian, the best we could do to bring you food and cocktails and a selection of everything you want.
I think just walking into the place, you'll see that every detail has been thought of.
Curated.
I think that's most people's feedback is that they didn't realize that walking in, that everything has been thought of for them already. And that comes from, two idiots that love comedy and Paul, who understood the beat of nightlife and what it means to be out. I certainly know that stuff. I would say Paul and Dave were definitely more in that nightlife world than we were, and just understood like what drives a good time. And anytime you're thinking of people outside yourself and considering what they need and what they want on a night out, I mean, like, it's a winning recipe, and I urge people to do it too. Like we always felt like our arrival on the scene of comedy helped raise everyone's game. We felt like every comedy club, and it's true. And I don't think it's arrogant to say it. I think it's great that everybody decided, what, we can do better.
Right, and when we got on the scene, a new comedy club hadn't opened in
a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the other thing. Of course, everything was just humming along because it hadn't been changed. Nobody had challenged the status quo. And here we come out of left field, the first new comedy club in New York for I don't know how long to this day. I would say it's decades almost. And we spiced things up a little bit. And we took the best of what we saw, the inspiration we had from places like The Cellar. And then we took the worst that we saw, and we also wanted to make sure that we learned from that and gave back people a better experience. And then all along the way, at the forefront of our mind was always about the comedians themselves and making sure we created a place for them, a safe space, a place where they were treated as they should, as talent, and not just, hey, this guy is going to bring me some customers tonight.
Right.
Part of the
we came from the other side of it. We actually came from the comedy element of it and treating these people with the respect, or, even a new person deserves respect. Just getting on stage, just making this move of performing in front of an audience deserves, in my opinion, a lot of respect. And I think that's what we always try to to, perpetrate and make sure that people knew that these people needed to be treated like respect.
I want to congratulate you guys on your 10-year run. I've been watching it forever. You guys are tremendous human beings. Paul Italia, Patrick Milligan, Cris Italia, the people who own and operate the Stand NYC, the standnyc.com on the web. Check them out. And I thank you guys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do.